What year was that? Shotgun.
1887.
All right, so before we get started, the Torah says in Devarim 8, verse 10, to eat and be satisfied, and you'll bless Adonai your God for the good land He's given us. Let's do that. But we have eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
So we read Torah Portion Qedoshim. We actually read in the Haftorah Ezekiel 20, verses 2 through 20, and Mark chapter 12. This was the first verse. You see the word Qedoshim there. There's the word Kadosh is in the same portion, as well as you people are to be holy. In other words, you all, Qedoshim, plural, and then it says, for I, Adonai your God, am also holy here, and it says that's the word Kadosh. These were the aliyot. And we'll start here with some discussion questions. I don't have a slide that asks the number of mitzvot in this portion, but there are quite a few by the traditional count. There are 13 positive and 38 negative mitzvot from this Torah portion.
Especially the fifth holiday.
For the negative ones, or for?
Mm-hmm. So we start with a question. It's actually based on a previous Torah portion, and that is from Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 7, which kind of defines peace offerings, and it actually gives a couple different categories of peace offerings there. So if you, instead of starting here in Leviticus 19, back in 19, turn your Bibles back to chapter 7, beginning at verse 11. So it was a couple of Torah portions, Torah portion Tzav. Which says this: this is the law for sacrificing peace offerings offered to Adonai. If a person offers it for giving thanks, he is to offer it with the thanksgiving sacrifice of unleavened cakes mixed with olive oil, matzah spread with olive oil, and cakes made of fine flour mixed with olive oil and fried. With cakes of leavened bread, he is to present his offering together with the sacrifice of his peace offerings for giving thanks. From each kind of offering, he is to present one as a gift offering, or as a gift for Adonai. It will belong to the Kohen who splashes the blood of the peace offerings against the altar. The meat of the sacrifice of his peace offerings for giving thanks is to be eaten on the day of his offering. He is not to leave any of it until morning. But the sacrifice connected with his offering is for a vow or is a voluntary offering. Then, while it is to be eaten on the day he offers the sacrifice, the remains of it may be eaten the next day. Which is, when you're reading in our portion, it says the latter, that you have to eat it by the next day, but don't let any of it remain until morning. So with that type of offering, does it seem like the offerings are mandatory or not?
Doesn't sound like it.
Sounds like they're voluntary, particularly when you see the kind that says, if it's for a vow. And we know that vows are by definition voluntary. They're not mandatory.
Right.
You're not required to take a vow. So, for example, the most famous type of vow, perhaps, that we in Scripture is the Nazirite vow, and that's always been a
a voluntary act to take that. And that's when reading in about Paul in Acts 18, he appears to be taking a Nazarite vow, and ending that vow in Acts 21, I believe, is where he's basically showing how much he loves Torah by doing something that Torah authorizes but doesn't require. In other words, you're basically taking an additional set of obligations upon yourself voluntarily to do that is not required for those who have not taken such a vow.
Can I go off path a bit?
Sure.
What about, there may be a difference in kind of vow. What about the type of vow where you remember the vow of a dead body that's found out in the country?
A vow to say that you did not have anything to do with it?
Right. Supposed to have the elders of the closest city to that body come out and take a vow that they had nothing to do with it. They're commanded there to do a vow. Would that be the same thing, or is that a little something different?
I think it's more like that's more of an affirmation that they're, that this is true. Because a vow doesn't, in a vow in this context, is something that is you're undertaking to do, not, in other words, taking an oath that you're swearing that you didn't have anything to do with it. I think those are.
Okay, so there could be a difference between an oath and a vow.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Or maybe positive and negative vows, like but by my oath, I did not do this, or by my oath, I will do this.
Yeah, when you think of it in a different terminology, when you are sworn in to tell the truth in a court, example, you're sworn to tell the truth. You're not really. It's not quite the same as a vow to undertake something or to live the life of a Nazarite or to bring an offering, even for that matter. So what about the gathering of the produce? That's back in chapter 19, verses 9 and 10.
I mean, what was why they didn't completely bring
And
it
the
all?
question kind of is, wouldn't it be wasteful to leave something on the side there, to leave Yah's bounty on the ground?
No.
It doesn't seem disrespectful.
No,
It seems
Because
charitable.
leaving that was for the poor and the
Right.
needy.
Yeah, it's not being disrespectful, it's actually keeping it
Like
mixed up, right?
Ruth
Yeah.
did.
Exactly like
when
Ruth.
he came.
Mhm.
Was
Because-
to get.
The text actually tells why to do it. It's in chapter 19, verses 9, particularly verse 10 tells the reason for it. It says, leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am Adonai your God. So the reason isn't you're being wasteful of the produce that Yah has given you through the land. It's rather that you're using that produce to help those who are at a disadvantage right now.
Well, it's not being wasteful if God commanded you to do it.
Yes, and there's a couple things different than the current system in that, well, in America, you can't really do this very well. You would, unless you have some kind of a sign saying that, otherwise.
Well, even then, nowadays, nobody is, even the poor, is not going to go out to the fields for the most part and work and glean something. They're going to go to the food bank, they're going to go wherever.
yeah.
They don't have to work for it now.
Yeah, because this actually requires them to go to the field and get it.
Yeah.
But even if it wasn't with our cultural problem with the welfare system, our technology system, many people live far away from agricultural bases. So we already have that, just a transportation problem.
And
I mean, it's not
even
just
if-
as many
even if you have the transportation and you could get there, a farmer sees you in his field, he's gonna call cops.
Well, okay, the only reason they become like that, in the ancient world, everybody's living in these tiny villages. You're much more interspaced. Nowadays, because
Yeah.
there's not really a reason, people get alarmed at people on their property because, it's not the same.
I remember grandma in Indiana, she'd be driving along a country road and see a stand of corn. stop, get out and start taking some in a basket. Everybody does it around there. Huge fields.
Mhm.
Everybody did it. And the farmers didn't care.
Field corn,
Yeah, some of it was field corn.
some sweet corn.
Yeah.
I can see that. Because,
Well, yeah, but that, right there, they're in an agricultural base. It's kind of like, the same, how, the technology in society, how that worked there is a lot more similar to.
But what if we have the agencies that the poor go to today to get food? What if those agencies gleaned the fields?
Ask a government agent to work? Oh my
It's not
gosh.
government. It's not government.
You
Like the
couldn't.
food bank over here
Yeah.
is not government.
No, you're right, yeah.
Anyhow, I think there's a work element there that would prevent a lot of even poor people from taking advantage of that
Well,
nowadays.
if some poor guy was able to go out in your field and harvest half of it, you would hire him.
I'm talking about gleanings.
No, what I'm saying is if someone, to get to the point of stealing, at that point, he's literally out there working day and night to steal your corn. This guy's got some serious work ethic, At least that's what I would think. If I woke up in the morning, my entire field's gone, there's just one guy out there just running through the road.
Oh,
You
that is
think
not,
people would do that today? If a farmer that was within walking distance, a farmer had a field within walking distance of Lawton,
Mhm.
and he left gleanings for the poor. Come on out, get what you need. You think they'd do it nowadays?
No.
You think,
if it's
you think
known,
the poor would actually go out there and work to pick it and take it home and do all that?
I think if it's, you can't discount it if it's known that it's available to pick up and get.
I mean, the farmer can do his part, leaving it there.
Right. But
okay,
there have to be assurances that they're not gonna get a load of buckshot when they cross over the fence, so to
Yeah.
speak.
here's,
Well,
I think there might be
one for you.
very
Here's
few
one for
people.
you.
I don't think
So in the
much.
state of Washington, when the salmon run, you can go to a fishery, get out, run, stand in line, and they will literally hand you two salmons.
Really?
You can only get 2 a day, and the line is long, mister. There's a lot of poor people that show up down there and get that.
Well, yeah, that was like
but that's a
1990
handout.
something.
That's not, they're going in there and having to cut and.
Well,
Oh,
they won't let them touch the fish until because they're getting all the eggs out of the fish. So they'll throw it over here so they don't have to haul it off. You can have
Yeah,
two.
that's good, but that's the same as a food bank, except you could go inside and do it.
Well,
And they still hand it out to you, partition it out to you. You
yeah,
don't get so much.
that's because there's plenty of people.
See,
But my point is this, if somebody was so poor and so lazy, they wouldn't get out of their car and probably walk, what is it? Quarter of a mile max there and back to where they have to actually pick up the fish and come back. That's a lot of work.
CC writes, in Uzbekistan, they plant their grapes and melons along the fence lines so the people can pick what they need on the outside of the fence if they need food.
I like that. That's a good system.
That's probably why I said the edges of your field and the corners of your field.
She follows up, they become accustomed to famines in former Soviet countries.
I don't know, but bringing this into modern times, I mean, it might be one thing to think people might not pick up things like, raw grain and things like that, but I mean, considering that like in California and Michigan, people pay like $10 a head to go pick their own blueberries. I mean, like, if it was a blueberry farm and someone was offering me to go get the gleanings, I would go do it, but
Oh, blueberries.
I don't know if I would do that for any other type of item.
Well, in California, people pay money to go do it. I know.
So,
Well,
I
what
mean,
were
those
they
are
growing?
what kind of field it is.
What were they growing in that area in that time period mostly? What kind of fields would it be that God's commanded them to let the
Wheat
poor
and
people
barley.
come?
The
Wheat
staple-
and barley,
staples. I think.
which is the staples of the food they're gonna make.
Mhm.
So they would have to work getting it out of the ground, then
By
they'd have to
hand.
work by hand at
They
home,
didn't have
making the
trucks, they
meal.
didn't
Yeah.
have cars, they didn't have
Yeah,
motorcycles, they did everything by hand.
right.
Yeah,
So I think that's a way God has built into that system there to allow even a poor person to maintain some dignity
Dignity,
yeah.
by working for what
Ah.
he gets.
Okay, I get
True.
it.
True. Bible does say if you don't work, you don't eat. But still, I mean, even the picking up of the fish, you still have to walk out there and go get it.
Yeah, but you don't have to go out and cast the line.
But you have
Already
to
there.
prepare it in order to make it. Things
That's right. You
Similar.
have to prepare it. It's
It's
not-
there's a similar, it's not exact. but
Yeah,
there's
you
a
still have
similar-
to cook it and do all that kind of stuff
Got
and
it.
get it prepared.
I understand that.
But they won't let you cast the line because
So
they're
wait,
taking
hold
the
on.
fish to get
That's the problem
eggs
right
out.
there. There's your problem. A regulation against
But the work,
self-harvesting,
Regulatory.
yeah, but the work side of it too is you're doing work for them because they don't have to take the fish out and dump it. You get it and take it. And you only get 2 a day, so they even limit it. Because
Well, 2
otherwise, some
salmon
people
a day
don't
is a lot of food,
speak for yourself.
if it's the big salmons.
Mhm.
You said they're
Yeah,
big.
they are big. They're what, 20,
2 a
30
day?
pounds?
Heck, yeah.
Well, some people have been out there
Yeah.
5 days in a row.
Anyhow, I
Yeah.
just wanted to interject that was, to me, I think that's correct, that even the poor is allowed by God to have dignity in
Well-
not just getting a handout, but actually having skin in the game of
I
it.
totally agree.
When we lived in Illinois, there was this one farmer who, during the winter, he would plant one small field full of turnips, and he'd put up signs, turnips and rutabagas, come and get them.
Yep.
You know,
Mhm.
and and that might be a good thing to try and get going, like on social media. This idea of during harvest time, but well,
Well,
okay,
it was a cover crop. So instead of him having to plow it under, it lets you go in there and get it. That's what he did. And
No,
some
I know.
people, like he brought us some. I mean, we didn't know about
I
it.
guess the problem is nowadays you got so many nuts and so many people who are just want to get in your property,
Yeah.
get at you or do
Yes,
something.
no, yeah,
It's kind of a slight problem.
yeah.
So next question, what does it mean to quote, swear by my name falsely? From background 19 verse 12.
To make a promise in the name of God with no intention, or with no intention of fulfilling that
Or
promise.
not carrying it out, even if you had to, you could intentions to do it.
Mhm.
Well,
But
No, I
later
know
it
it's in
says that whether you swear by God or not, you're to carry out what you swore to do.
That's your yay.
well, I guess it means
yay,
it, but it says right there, it says, do not swear by my name falsely. It makes it sound like, at the moment of swearing, I guess it means the bar minimum, don't intend to not do this while you're swearing. That's just horrible,
Mm.
I mean, it's bad enough to later renege on it and think, oh, I should have done that. But at the moment, you're not going to keep it when you swear.
Well, that would be bad.
I guess it means that it's a lot worse to me than somebody who just didn't have the willpower later.
So what's the background or context behind it, let your yes be yes and your no be no?
When you swear something, you're bound to it, and it's not wise to go around swearing or making vows if you don't have to. As
You mean-
as little as possible.
You mean the scriptural context where that was written?
Well, the context of the time, what was happening with, the Yeshua says, well, simply it's best not to make a vow anyway, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because we've already talked about vows are voluntary, right?
Mhm.
So if you break a vow, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's swearing by my name falsely if you break a vow. And so that is what it says here, that'd be profaning the name of your God to
Or
do that.
bringing it to naught,
Yeah.
bringing the name to naught.
And so I think two parts behind it. You know that at the time that Yeshua said, let your yes be yes and no be no, people were making vows. It was just not a vow that was enforceable by Torah. In other words, it wasn't, swearing by the name of God to do something. It's, I swear by the gold in the altar or gold in the temple, which sounds important, sounds like a deep vow, but if you don't carry that out, it's not swearing by my name falsely.
So it was like a workaround, loophole kind of thing.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're
after
even
that
more.
when he says to swear not at all.
Yeah, it's better to not. Well, it's better to if you're gonna make a vow, carry it out. But it's better to not swear at all. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Meaning that you are to be so trustworthy that you don't have to make a vow to that people will believe you when you say you're going to do something. You're going to do it. Let your actions speak louder.
When you're doing business, a person will tell you that you're doing business, Billy Nader. That's without promise. I'll do this, but I can't promise you definitely all of these things. Here we say, oh, I'm going to call you at 2:00 in the morning or whatever. You don't do that in Israel. That you don't want to get into that kind of practice because it leads to this. Exercise it.
It's better to say, I'll call you at 2 in the morning if I can.
Yes. Billy Nader. It's not a promise, but I'll do the best I
It's an
can.
intention. You intend to do that. Okay.
So you don't document it on your calendar that this person's gonna do this at such and such a time, and then they don't show up, or you have to call 5 times during the week whenever you're busy in a business and you can't get there and everything. You call them, you let them know, I can't do this, and make other arrangements. Or, anyway, it's very, all the time, you don't make promises.
Yeah.
Never.
CC comments, if we make a vow, we're obligated to do it, but we are not going to be able to guarantee that we can fulfill it.
Which is why it ends up saying it's better not to make the vow, which is what you were saying. You can declare an intention, but not a vow.
It's like, I'll do the best I can, I want to help, it's what comes across.
I'll try.
And you know they're gonna do that. But
I think that sounds like what he's trying to get across there. Yeshua was.
But what about the king that made the vow and his daughter paid the price?
Jabin?
You know.
Is that Jabin? Jabin?
He had to live by his vow.
Yes.
He didn't sacrifice his daughter.
Well,
His
the
daughter
text
went to-
is in
We
that
don't
kind of
know that.
way.
We don't know that. We aren't told that he did or didn't.
Well, that would have been against Torah.
I don't know.
But it didn't
Well,
say
see,
that.
the
he
question
kept
is,
Torah, it just said
Can
he
you make
kept
a vow that is, human sacrifice is not according to Torah.
Right.
The question is, can you make a vow that involves human sacrifice? Or make a vow that involves going against Torah? Which would be a pretty bad vow to make. Obviously, he made it in ignorance.
Made it ignorance and haste. He didn't consider the consequences.
Right.
And tailor his vow toward that.
Right.
He just made an offhand vow.
That sin runs out that door.
Sacrificed, so the story I'm talking about, she wasn't sacrificed, she never married.
Yeah.
Was what?
I've heard it both ways. So.
What's odd to me is that God doesn't stop people from vowing. So there must be some people or some times where it is good But those people and times must be rather rare, apparently.
And how can he really do that?
Well-
Then we could say, we could blame him for us doing something wrong.
No, I mean, he could just say, don't make any vows, but he doesn't.
That's what he should have said.
No one says, there's no commandments, it's implied, like, it's not wise, but it's almost like, this is very strong advice, there's no commandment, do not make vows,
A vow by itself is a, it's
I guess
a
what I'm asking
voluntary obligation.
no, but what I'm trying to say is, since they're not banned by God, there must be some good use or good reason somewhere
And
for it.
that, a Nazarite job, for example, is a,
Good reason.
It's just-
I mean, there are vows that are scriptural.
No, I guess
But
there must be
it's,
some, worth somewhere at some times for some people. There must be some worth. Otherwise, why would God have allowed it to be, not allowed, I mean, God doesn't like physically stop you. I mean, why wouldn't he just simply, through Yeshua, we see Yeshua's opinion on these things. They're not wise. So why didn't he just, put the lid on the whole thing by saying no? There's some sort of worth.
We've got free will. It's
Well,
up to
no.
us to obey what he says.
No, I know, but I mean, he tells us Sabbath's not murder, but he doesn't stop us from murdering. He just tells us not to. What I'm saying is with the vows, why didn't he just tell us not to take vows if there was no value in a vow? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, obviously it means that there is value in
Yeah.
certain vows.
Certain vows, certain cases.
Well, I think you need to think about the Hebrew because you're talking about a neder here, a vow, which is between you and God.
Mm.
When you're talking about an oath, you're talking about something else. It's a different word in Hebrew. So you need to figure out where this particular word is in the Bible and what other things, making a promise,
Is an oath and a vow the same thing?
Different words, shavi, I think is the word for vow.
But is the meaning or the outcome the same on both of them?
Both, well, typically it's, one is on you personally. The other one is more, I guess, wider spread.
But both of them, you can say you're going to do them and then not do them.
You can,
Well, that's your choice.
Right. And that's
What it's talking
boils down
about
to.
is your commitment to God right here, between you and God. It's not about what you want or not want, it's what you want between you and God. Just like a man and woman get married and making vows. They make a commitment to stay married. When they break that, that's big problems. It's the same in our relationship with Yeshua.
All I meant to say was that there must be some good. As unwise and as much problems, hasty vows, or
There is.
unwise vows taken, there must be
There
some
is.
good. Yeah, that's all.
And
I'm
in
saying.
some places,
We still on that?
you're told to take your vows in the name of God.
That's scary.
so in this passage, the word is shava, is the word for swear, not swear by my name falsely. Remember there's two different translations of like Beersheba. It's well of seven or well of an oath.
Mhm.
And that's-
Really? So Sheva is oath?
Yes, or seven.
Oh, wow. Sheva, oath.
That's the importance of the number.
Mhm.
That's the importance of the number. Every number has a significance.
Some people are able to get a lot more strength than will when they take a vow. I don't know. Maybe some.
So we went from gleaning in the fields to
Vowing,
vowing, breaking vows.
So verse 17, do not hate your brother in your heart, but rebuke your neighbor frankly, so that you won't carry sin because of him. So the question is, how would one be responsible for bearing sin because of your neighbor?
Because you didn't warn him.
I have to go with that, it's the only thing I can think of. You didn't tell him what he did was wrong. Whether you're a party to or not.
Well, there is a specific case in this Torah portion that talked about this in the sense of, let me find it here. It's 20 verse 4, at least in, yes, 20 verse 4, and this is the translation I have here. It says, if the people of the land look the other way when that man sacrifices his child to Molech and fail to put him to death, then I'll set myself against him, his family, and everyone who follows him go fornicating after Molech and cut them off from their people. So there's a responsibility to not allow that to happen. This, is your brother, is your fellow countryman here that is doing something that is so odious that they must be stopped. And so if you don't do that, then it says, verse 5, and I'll set myself against him who looked the other way. His family, everyone who follows him, to go fornicating after Molech. In other words, by, sort of like, it was a Christian pastor that was in a concentration camp.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
He's trying a different instance.
Well, in this case, it might be right though. Bonhoeffer said, "Not to speak is to speak." So that's
Yeah. Yeah, it was Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, that's a Bonhoeffer quote. So this one is sort of saying the same thing, not to speak, to not rebuke your neighbor. If you don't rebuke your neighbor frankly, you have essentially spoken up in favor of whatever that neighbor is doing.
Exactly.
You're saying, yep, I say that practice is good to go. There's a big check mark.
Yep.
Good job. And you're essentially saying,
You're capitulating.
yeah, not to speak is to speak.
Of course, he's talking there, I think, to the whole people, not to an individual.
Well,
Because like today, you can't go do that.
You can't rebuke your neighbor frankly.
No. No, not
he means
that.
go and pass sentence and execute judgment upon somebody, which, from a strictly logical grounds, I'm not quite sure if that's correct. From an
You can't do it.
you shouldn't do it.
That's what the laws and the governments are set up to do. Not individuals.
You mean legislative
Well,
morality like Hillary Clinton?
I
said,
applied this verse to Moloch as an example of the text of talking about that.
Yeah.
But this text by itself doesn't require you to stop someone from from murdering their children. You can stop them from murdering their children.
Yeah.
But rebuking your neighbor frankly is still something that can be done.
Yeah.
You can't, as it says, you can't necessarily, this is saying people look the other way when that man sacrificed his child to Molech, so that's talking in the past tense, that's already happened. So you can't then be a vigilante and kill the neighbor who sacrificed his daughter to Molech. But you can stop the neighbor from sacrificing his daughter to Molech. if you hear her screaming. So, passage here, of course, we read it in our gospel reading as well. Who said, love your neighbor as yourself? Well, Yeshua said that, but it's also here in the Torah. Don't take vengeance on or bear a grudge against any of your people. Rather, love your neighbor as yourself. And Yeshua said that was essentially the second greatest commandment. That upon those two commandments, the Torah and prophets hang. So you look at it in terms of two parts here. The first part is loving God. The second part is loving your neighbor. That's what Yeshua interpreted that to
You mean
be.
of the Ten Commandments? The first part, if you look at the Ten Commandments, the first part is how you deal with God.
Yeah.
Second part is how you deal with other people.
Right, and that's what Yeshua basically said of those. If you look at it in terms of what are those commandments about, this sort of a summation of the Torah. It doesn't replace the Torah; it's part of the Torah, right? What Yeshua said. So it's it's not something separate from the Torah or opposed to the Torah. It's rather categorizing the types of commandments and relationships between those. Relationship with with the Almighty, as well as relationship with your neighbors, your
On
people.
these, saying they hang on these is just another way of saying that,
They didn't hang, meaning that it says depend upon that.
or relate to, maybe.
Well, if you were to abolish one of those two that Yeshua said, then the commandments concerning loving your neighbor would fall to the ground. So that would be, those commandments must be in place in order for the other commandments to be carried out. So you can't, in other words, within this Torah portion, we have some positive or some negative examples of how to love your neighbor or to not love your neighbor. For example, chapter 20, verse 10, if a man commits adultery with another man's wife, that is, with the wife of his fellow countryman. So you can't be loving your neighbor by having an adulterous relationship with the neighbor's wife.
That's right.
So, to love your neighbor as yourself, that, you're not doing that if you're breaking that mitzvah. So these things do, roll together in the sense of, that one command to love your neighbor as yourself would summarize, all of these would fall under that same idea, I think. You're not loving your father's daughter if you're having a wrong relationship with her, that sort of thing. So continuing on now, this is a later authority who said concerning you shall love your neighbor as yourself, this is a fundamental, all-inclusive principle of the Torah. The later rabbi, very famous.
Rashi?
Very close. Not really that close.
Rambam?
Okay, let me back up. It's before Rambam and Rashi, but after Yeshua.
Oh, Gamaliel?
No,
Hillel.
Hillel was before Yeshua.
I thought you said it was before.
We're just
Yeshua.
shooting at random, all the famous rabbis we know.
No. I'm just saying. I thought you said
Wasn't
before
it-
Yeshua.
After Yeshua, before Rashi.
Wasn't it Rabbi Akiva?
Rabbi Akiva is correct.
Smarty.
Have you gone?
Rabbi Akiva said, this is the fundamental rule of the Torah. Hillel paraphrased the commandment saying, what is hateful to you, do not do to others. The sages based a variety of rules on this verse, illustrating the sort of insensitivity that is demanded of all Jews. For example, this precept requires the least painful death be used for capital offenders, according to this commentary.
So Hillel said it first.
No. Hillel.
Hillel said, what is
a-
hateful to you, do not do to others. Rabbi Akiva said that love your neighbor as yourself is a fundamental rule of the Torah.
Right.
Okay, so a more recent rabbi, the altar of Slobodka, said the commandment is to love others as you love yourself, just as you love yourself instinctively without looking for reasons, so you should love others even without reasons.
Well, I can't stand myself sometimes.
Take a shower.
Not in that respect.
Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, chief rabbi of Königsberg, now called Kaliningrad, said your affection. Here's how to love your neighbor. Your affection for others should be real, not feigned or faked. Always treat others with respect. Always seek the best for them. Join in their pain. Greet them with friendliness. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Assist them physically, even in matters that are not very difficult. Be ready to assist with small or moderate loans and gifts, and do not consider yourself better than them. That's his idea of how to put into practice how to love your neighbor as yourself. Anything you would add to this?
Sounds a lot like some of the things you read in the Boy Scout manuals from a long time ago.
Boy Scouts, they don't exist anymore.
Yeah. The antiquated, extinct Boy
Now
Scouts.
it's the gender scouts.
Oh.
Okay, continuing to chapter 20, some questions. Discussion about Moloch, but what is the meaning of Leviticus 20, verse 8, which says, observe my regulations and obey them. I am Adonai, set you apart to be holy. So, what are you supposed to be observing to obey?
It's over. His commandments, statutes, and judgments.
So, here's the word, of course, in terms of regulations, as I read here, it's huchotai, so it's my regulations or my chuchot, which are the types of mitzvot that are you obey because he said to do it, right? Not because it makes logical sense, not because it's obvious, but the kind that you're to do because he said to do it.
Right.
The trust me ones.
Yeah. And so those are the kind that are perhaps the most difficult to convince your neighbor that they're good to keep, right? It's a type of mitzvah that, it doesn't make logical sense. I mean, for example, kashrut, the clean versus unclean, what is kosher, what is not kosher.
Yeah.
Those are those are a type of chuchot.
Mm-hmm.
So within the Western world, that is a stumbling block for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, they like their piggy sandwiches and their rabbit stew.
I'm not sure about the rabbit stew part of it, but that's probably just localized.
Oh, I don't know. I ate rabbits when I was a kid. Gray squirrels, rabbits. Don't do it no more. It's not kashrut.
Why is Moloch mentioned at this time?
Because they're about to enter a land where that is practiced. I wouldn't doubt it was practiced in Egypt, but I can't say it wasn't.
Well, this happens. Think about it. This is written before they entered into the land. So Moloch must have been I think Moloch is part of the deities of the people of the land that they're moving into.
Yeah.
The idea is don't go into the land and to take upon their customary practices.
Is this the part where it's after Sinai, but before the episode with the 12 spies? Is this in between that?
I
I'm
think
not
this is
sure
before
if
that.
it's,
This is before that.
No. These were given after the Ten Commandments, weren't they? I mean, this is after Sinai.
I think this is after the 10 words were given,
Okay, so
but I don't know where these were given in relationship to the bad report of the recon team.
what I'm thinking is it wasn't the center of the Moloch worship in not Edom, Moab.
Canaan.
Wasn't it the Moabites? Was it the Moabites or the ones that came out to attack Israel on their way from Sinai to?
That was Edomites, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't the Edomites. It was. I think it was the
Ammonites.
I think it was the Moabites.
No, Amalekites. It was the Amalekites.
Well, either way, the center of that, I thought in the Bible, and the center of the Moloch cult was Moab, the other side of the river, the other side of Jordan. And it seemed this is the people that they're around or having a confrontation with at this time. Maybe that's why. Not necessarily the people they're going over to, but the people they're around right now.
Look at the Haftorah we read today in Ezekiel 20. It appears that they were doing this at that time. In Ezekiel's time,
Mhm.
they were also sacrificing to Moloch.
Mhm.
And that was, definitely driving a wedge between the God of Israel and the God of Moloch, or the God of Israel and the people who sacrificed to Moloch, including the Israelites who did that, right? And Jim may remember it more than I, but we discussed where this occurred. I think it's Gehinnom is or Gehenna is the
Mhm.
location near Jerusalem where this was commonly practiced.
Well, we believe today over there that Islam, Allah is the spiritual of the God of Moloch, modern day term, because they believe among the Shiites, they believe in sacrificing their children, putting their children out there in the front lines. It's better to die, you train your children. It's better for you to sacrifice your life. You have a higher place in paradise whenever you leave this world. And so to die is an honor for them
Well, right.
with Allah. And that's why when you study about, Islam, the roots of it and everything, that's what we consider that it is threatening today.
There's a statement or phraseology, something like, "We love death more than you love life." So that's why we'll win, they think.
Because they have a higher place in paradise to leave this world.
Right.
And the
Well,
more people they can kill in the process, and their way of killing. Like, as a
Butchery.
journalist, I've been with them. They abduct children up there in Lebanon, take them, rape them, and rape them. I don't care if it was boys or girls. Cut off their fingers. Everyone that raped cut off a finger, then a hand, then an arm, then their legs. It was terrible. And we found soldiers were found. The girls, their wombs were cut out, and the men, their genitals cut out, because they can't have children in paradise. And living with that, this thing with Moloch, I don't think people have a clue what that spiritual darkness is that Israel is dealing with.
I know they don't.
So besides this Torah portion, Moloch is also mentioned in Devarim 18 verse 10, putting a child through fire. There's some text describing this. This is from Talmud Bavli, Sanhedrin 64b. This was a form of idolatry named Moloch, and this was the manner of its worship, that one would hand over one's child to the pagan priest, who would then make two huge fires. The child was then passed through on foot between the two fires.
Yeah.
In the Jerusalem Talmud, it describes it as holding the child, the child's father himself passing his child through the fire. And the Midrash says that, it asks the question, how did the Molech work in the valley of Ben Hinnom? It was built outside of Jerusalem. It was an idol with the face of a calf and open hands, like someone who wants to take something from another. They would light this idol on fire until his hands were scorching. There were 7 chambers before him, and according to the quality of the sacrifice, that's how close one could come to him. If he came with a bird, then chamber 1. A goat, chamber 2. Sheep, chamber 3. Calf, chamber 4. Cow, chamber 5. And ox, chamber 6. But to get to the closest, he brought his child. The priest would say that he was offering the greatest sacrifice. He would enter the innermost chamber and then go and kiss the Moloch idol. The priest would then take the child and place it near the Moloch idol. They would then bang with drums to drown out the cries. Come see how obsessed the nation was with idol worship, so that they were willing to do something so reprehensible. But in the future, says God, I'll remove your heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh, quoting from Ezekiel 36. So that's all the slides on the Torah portion I have. I have some slides on the Haftorah from Chabad, the Haftorah in a nutshell. Any other thoughts you want to talk about during this portion, or the Torah portion, the 2 chapters we read and studied? Well, this is a couple slides from Chabad on the Haftorah, where it says God's repeated enjoinders to observe the commandments from this portion, keep the Shabbat, and eschew idol worship, reflective of this week's Torah portion, which discusses many commandments, including the obligation to sanctify the Shabbat and reject idolatry. The prophet Ezekiel himself transmits God's message, reminding the Jews how he chose them as his nation, how he took them out of Egypt and promised to take them to the Holy Land. In Egypt, God dispatched a prophet who exhorted the Jews to ban their idols, yet they did not do so. He then gave them laws and statutes, including that of the observance of Shabbat as a sign between him and his people. But the house of Israel rebelled against me, as it says, in the wilderness. They walked not in my statutes, and they despised my ordinances, which if a man keeps, he will live through them, and my Sabbaths they desecrated exceedingly. The prophet goes on to mention God's punishments of the Jews in the desert, namely that they did not enter the Holy Land. He then admonishes the children not to follow their father's ways, but to observe his laws, and to sanctify Shabbat. And finally, questions. Can you
1887.
Can you swing cock that thing so it cocks while you're swinging around?
Only if you had long arms.
Well, this this particular model has the basically just a pistol grip. It has the buttstock cut off of it.
Oh, that works.
I don't recommend doing that. We're riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, I don't recommend doing it at all. Might shoot your arm off.
Sure does look cool though.
It's
Yeah, it looks cool.
but a minute it's cool.
Well, if there are no questions, it's time to get set up for Haftorah. It is after dark.
Who's the guzzler? We need to establish that right off the bat, since there are
Wesley.
no children here.
Wesley. He's the youngest of us all.
Now someone else try.
Nah, needs a veteran.
Well, for those who are watching online, Shavuot Tov.
to the toe.
Where is the stuff?